Hi, everyone, and welcome to the brand new show, The Experiencer Perspective, right here on Rebellious Ufology. I'm so happy to welcome you to tonight's show on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And if you like what you see here tonight, consider joining the rebellion by hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to ring the bell to get notifications on all of our videos. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at WitchyLinny, Witchy with a Y, Linny with an I-E. Also, if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, I have a morning show right here on Rebellious Ufology that I'd love for you to check out every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And there's Lulu, as we all know and love. Lulu has to join the show. So the morning show is every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. I give you the UFO podcast daily lineup. I've been working with other podcasters to get their info so I can tell you who's on that day, what time they'll be on, and what they'll be talking about. And oftentimes I have an experiencer story for you. So on this show, The Experiencer Perspective, we'll be talking about all things with regards to experiencers. So whether you're consider yourself an experiencer, a contactee, or an abductee, or even if you're just curious as to what it's all about, this is definitely the place for you. We have Paul Hamden and Cyan joining us. They're both lifelong experiencers and have weekly, if not daily, ongoing contact with the Zetas. According to their website, the Zeta-Connection, and there's a link in the description down below to that, they state, the Zetas are aware that they are misunderstood and have been misrepresented over the years. They'd encourage a person to take the time to reevaluate what they think they know, and become acquainted with the information that they have given and proven themselves. And that's exactly what we're here to do in this show. We're here to look at the information and examine it from all perspectives to see if we can come to understand it better. This will be a weekly call-in show so that you can call in and speak with Paul and Cyan or myself. They will be here with me every week, and you can either ask questions or get their perspective on maybe like what the Zetas might think about something. So for those of you who don't want to be on camera, that's totally fine to join in just audio, or if you prefer, you can always ask questions in the chat. And just a reminder before we start, if you do ask a question in the chat, please type it in all caps so that I can see it easier. Also, if you know someone who might enjoy this conversation, please feel free to share the love, share the show so they can join in too with us. And if you're so inclined and would like to please the YouTube gods, please give this show a like and leave a comment down below. Okay, so with all of that, I think we are ready to start the show. So let me get Paul and Cyan on for everyone. Lulu, the co-producer. She thinks so, for sure. All right, let me get them on here for us. Hey, Paul and Cyan, welcome so much to the very first show that we have here on Rebellious Ufology with you guys. I'm so excited.
Thanks, Lynn. Really enjoying it. Yeah.
Oh, good. So let's talk a little bit. I know we have so many, I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions for you guys, but let's talk a little bit about you for those who maybe haven't met you before. So you guys are experiencers, and you have incredible experiences all the time, really. Can you tell them a little bit about your background, your history, and kind of your current scenario as well?
Yeah, okay. So my first contact started when I was about 18 months old, and I started seeing these. I didn't even know, at 18 months old, you wouldn't know what an extraterrestrial was, so there was no fear. That continued on all the way through to 5, and then at 5 I started to astral travel and started to go to lots of different dimensional spaces. I didn't know what they were either as a child. I was also on craft at 5 as well. So interacting with the Zetas continually. When I was 18, they bought a craft, and it was only about 10 meters from me. The side of the craft went clear. 2 of the Zetas were standing there. They were watching me. My friends were with me as well. So we had 3 friends that were also seeing the Zetas as well. Mm-hmm. When I was about 28, I woke up in the morning to go to work. It was dark. I got dressed, walked out in the kitchen, and basically got taken down by 3 Zetas because I didn't know back then, I sort of had too many screen memories what was going on. Mm. And when I back up in my bed again, my clothes were on backwards. And so I knew that something had happened, whatever. So I thought it was all a bit strange, really. As well as all of that continuing on, I also had all the paranormal stuff taking place. So as a medium, I was also seeing what's called objectively, I could see spirits walking around me, full form spirits. But I didn't want to talk to them. I didn't want to talk to the extraterrestrials as well. When I was 40, I started moving heavily into development of trance work and working with guides and spirits, mental mediumship, and then started to develop what's called physical mediumship as well. And so that's not uncommon for a lot of people to have paranormal experiences with, say, spirits, and then also extraterrestrial, or vice versa. When I was around, I think it would have been around 50, which was about 2013, I think, or something. So many dates. A craft came and landed, and I had about 20 of my friends with me, which was pretty cool. We knew it was coming. There's a big story behind all that, how that took place, how the beings come out of the craft, all those sorts of things. And obviously, as we go on, we can discuss all of this. We have contact all the time. We had a craft come 3 weeks ago, just before the Ukraine issue started, and they said that they'd come to view what was going on. I'm glad that they came, and I'm sure that they are working very hard to do something. We had a global meditation yesterday, and we invited the Zetas to come along and do that. We have the Zetas actually walk around our house as well, sometimes as distortions, other times as physical entities. And not just the whole ET thing, but from the other manifestation side, we've also had Pan physically materialize in the house, in front of people. And this is the best thing, is when these beings do these sorts of things, if they do them with other people there, I can turn around and say to them, did you see that? Because if there's nobody around you, you're going, what's going on here? It's sort of a bit crazy. So, obviously as we start to share more and talk to more and more people, people will understand that we do have a fairly extensive level of contact. So obviously in the beginning, it seemed like abduction, but we've come to know that it's actually not abduction. And I think, we spend a lot of time talking to people, counselling and helping and supporting. And they also come to that realisation that they're actually not being abducted either after a while. So that's me at the moment.
How do you follow that? I mean,
you have just as many wonderful experiences.
I guess my story is sort of similar to Paul at the beginning, but it's quite diverse when I get to about 20. But I mean, my earliest memories of the Zetas being around was when I was about 4.5 years old. They made themselves known. I have the clearest memory of them being there, but of course they didn't show themselves as themselves at that point. I was too young, and it would have scared the living daylights out of me. So they did this kind of screen memory thing on me, where although I recall the event, they look like giant rabbits. I mean, some people see clowns, some people see owls. Obviously, I was quite happy with rabbits when I was 4 years old, and that's what they showed me. Only these ones are about 6 foot tall. And in my lounge room, when, they really shouldn't have been in my lounge room in the middle of the night. But so, as you get older, your screen memories drop, and then you actually are able to see the beings behind the screen memories. My contact with them has been lifelong as well. And they came to me. They started showing themselves in a way that would be recognized as to what they actually were when I was in the early stages of sitting for trance and physical mediumship, as a medium as well. And my sitters would report seeing alien faces over me when there should be human spirit faces transfigured over me in ectoplasm or in energy. And, after a while of hearing that, you begin to start questioning your own mind, as well as the mind of all your sitters. And eventually it spurred me to go try find out what was going on. And in doing that, I met Paul online in an online chat forum, sort of saying, what help? And he was able to describe to me all the sorts of things I had been experiencing, which I hadn't told anybody. And, through that, we developed a friendship, and he helped me sort of come to terms with what was going on, which also then made everything else in my life make sense as well. So, yeah, goodness. There's so much to say. I guess it will unpack as we go on.
I guess so that we're pretty much evidence-based. So if extraterrestrials say they're coming into the house, we ask if we can record. Can we, sort of record this? Or they go, sometimes they'll let us. Other times they say no. So we've got a lot of compressed audio of them talking in clicks.
Wow.
We've got imagery of them coming, imagery of them talking as well. So still shots of certain things. That we've also, because we actually were lucky enough last year to get a picture of a craft that was above the house by, I don't know how far up, it looked like it was 100 meters, who knows, and it was a triangular type craft, and we knew all about it. They told us what sort of craft it was, that we could play with it if we wanted to, so we had a go at trying to drive it, and that didn't work.
Wow.
Yeah.
How successful were you?
Look, they gave me, like a crash course.
Yeah.
That's a joke. They gave me a crash course, and I think it was about 10 minutes. And then they let me have a go at it, and I just couldn't do it. I was panicking that I would somehow just damage this craft, this drone. There was nobody on it. That was the other thing. So there was thankfully, there was no one else on it.
Yeah.
It's more like you do a remote control with a drone machine.
Okay, yeah.
So you're trying to control a fairly significant craft, doing it that way. But we've actually got a picture of it.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Now, how big was this craft?
I think that it would have been about 8 meters across.
Yeah, it was a little one.
It was a baby.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm trying to do the conversion to feet.
That's 24 feet.
Okay, I was going to say, I think a meter is about 3 feet. So yes, okay, perfect. Wow, that's a good size. I mean, a good size kind of craft drone. Yeah. So was it a drone, or was it something that they flew there on?
No, they wouldn't have flown there on this. So, like a lot of these craft are unmanned. There's no containers on them or anything. They release the orb technology to the hybrids that exist on the planet, and then those orbs go around, scan, collect all of the data. All of the orb technology goes back onto the drone, and the drone jumps back to planet.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so the drone is like a shuttlecraft for the orbs.
Yeah. Oh, it has to be. Yeah, for sure. Because the orbs have no real. They've got a methodology for moving, but they've got no ability to be able to be a propulsion system to move interstellar or into.
Wow, that's amazing. I love it. That's fascinating. I always wondered about the orbs. So now. When you see orbs, because you guys see orbs as well around your house as well, too, right? What do they look like to you guys?
Well, it depends. So if it's a spirit person, it could just be just a little orb. But if it's, I've had them the size of a basketball that are extraterrestrial orbs. One was out the backyard, and I looked out through the back door, and I saw this beautiful purple sort of sphere sitting on the ground. I thought I'd go and look. So I walked out to it. So that means obviously it's been there for a minute or so already. And I stood next to it, and I walked, it rolled with me. I walked, it rolled with me. And we walked together for about, 7 meters, and then it just disappeared. So that was that one. But I've had orbs come into the house. I'm looking at the window that it came through. It would have been 3/4 of a meter across, so about 2.5 feet. And it was so big that it lit the whole room up. It was massive. And the story behind that is that when the orb had actually disappeared, I looked out through the window, and it looked like there was some sort of a steel rail out on the road, but it had a red and blue light on it. The interesting thing was this thing just lifted up and then just took off, like at an infinite, speed. And I thought it was some vehicle. In my mind, I thought it was a vehicle. And so I just turned my head, because there's windows all around me, and looked, and there was nothing on the road at all. And then I realised that I'd had an encounter, but it was not a conscious, like where I could actually talk to them. This was just an encounter with technology. What about your encounters with orbs?
Orbs.
We had them the other day at the house.
I was going to say, about a fortnight ago, we had 3 nights
You guys have
So,
everything. It's amazing.
it doesn't stop. It really doesn't stop. But yeah, a couple of weeks ago, we had 3 nights on the trot. We had orbs outside observing us from outside into our lounge area. And one was the size of a tennis ball, and it shot off on a diagonal, and another one was the size of a football. And that one was black, just a black, solid black sphere. So they come in all different shapes and sizes and perform different functions, whether they're just observing or scanning or, who knows what they get up to. But, they used orbs because people accept orbs. People generally associate orbs with spirit people. Yeah. And nobody's afraid of an orb. Everybody finds them fascinating.
True,
and so, rather than sending their technology in the form it actually is, they will use, I don't know whether it's literally an orb and the technology is inside, or whether it's a projection of an orb around it. I don't know, but we're not scared of orbs. We're not going to try and, bash it or freak out or run away. We're going to stand there and look at it and go, wow, and of course, then that gives them a chance to do whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought of that.
With spirit orbs, they're different because when a spirit person's actually coming through from spirit realm, they're lowering their vibrational process. And as they bleed into the physical, they show themselves as an orb. They're not actually rendering an orb or creating an orb. It's like a pinhole in fabric. They come through as an orb.
That's the spirit people.
Yeah, spirit people. And then, of course, spirit people, once they've manifested as a light, if the person has what's classed as objective mediumship, where they can see spirits in the room, then, of course, they can then show themselves in full form.
So, okay, I have a question for you, because I get asked this question quite often by people, and they want to know, is there a connection between paranormal activity, i.e., I think they mean like with spirits, and ET? And obviously, I mean, we've kind of like touched on it already, that obviously there are orbs involved with both, but is there any other overlap between those two kind of phenomena?
Yeah, so generally what takes place is that when people are born, they'll either be a non-hybrid or they'll be a hybrid. And if they're a hybrid entity, they'll generally have extraterrestrial activity around them, because their own race will be coming and visiting them all the time, checking up on them, making sure they're okay, taking samples, doing lots of testing and all the rest of it. If you are purely from spirit realm, then of course you'll have activity around you from spirit realm as well. But the hybrid, because they've also got a spirit component, will also have spirit activity around them. So the poor, I shouldn't say poor hybrids, but the hybrids generally get a bit confused because they've got spirit people going on around them, and they've got phenomenon, and they've also got the extraterrestrial phenomenon. But everybody has things like extended energy, where they can create paranormal type processes like doors banging, knocking, drawers moving in and out, projections, these things. And so we get asked to go to people's homes and to look and see what is it that's actually happening, because people do generalize. They go, I've got a ghost. Well, the thing is that ghosts are just energetic replays, and there's a trigger that triggers them, and then they'll come and do the same thing that they always do. Whereas spirits aren't like that. Spirits have consciousness. And that's why it's actually quite an involved subject, because there's so much going on, and we have to be careful not to try to just sort of place it all into one category, because it can't fit into a category, because it's multiple types of consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's so nice to hear you very eloquently put it. It's much better than I have been able to. Enzo has a question for you. Paul, earlier you mentioned seeing a distortion for these visitors. Could that be what some people describe as shadow beings?
Interesting that you mentioned shadow beings, Enzo. As an astral traveler, I'm also able to, because we've got other abilities as mediums, I'm able to see people when they actually come into the house in an astral form. And also, just want to explain something, the astral is around all of us, everywhere, all the time. And so at some point, in time on the planet. Nearly half the planet's always asleep, and most people are astraling anyway to refresh their physical bodies. They move out of their physical form. And so when we see these shadow people, and I've seen them, they move around the walls sometimes. They're just people that are actually astraling. That's the difference. They're just a shadow of a shadow form. But of course, if a person's actually, astraling while they're asleep. Now, if you're astraling consciously, the person can actually be a distortion, a full distortion standing in the room.
Wow.
I guess with all these different forms of consciousness that it could be, being mediums and being trained by the Zetas, we're able to quite easily identify whether a distortion is a spirit person, an extraterrestrial, or a person astraling. So it's, you define it in consciousness rather than the physical appearance of the distortion.
Okay. Well, that is fascinating. I have never heard of now, when you say traveling along the walls, you're talking about the shadow beings that look like a shadow on the wall, like cast on the wall, right? Not like the 3D, like really dark, solid. So I've never even thought of that or heard of that, like maybe being someone traveling on the astral plane, but that makes so much sense. That's amazing. Wow. It's kind of blowing
This is
my
the
mind.
benefit, I think, of, if you've been traveling your whole life as an astral traveler, you've been a medium your whole life, you've been in contact with extraterrestrials. When people come to us and say, look, I've got this experience, we can look back and go, oh yeah, I've had that something like that happen. And then, of course, if you don't know, you can always say to the guides, because we work with guides as well, what's your opinion? And the guides are quite funny. They're just people that have passed over, and they can give you some of the most hilarious advice. Really, sometimes they'll even just pip in conversations. There's been a couple of times we've had what's called independent direct voice, and that's when the spirit people use the ectoplasm or the life force of the medium and speak for themselves into the room. They use their own voice and they speak.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's why sometimes people will hear their names being called.
Yeah.
That you'll hear the name audibly in the room. That's because spirits are using a little bit of your life force to create a phenomenon that then is called independent direct voice. But for them to do it continually, they need to train the person's life force to be extended from their body, put back.
Wow. So when you're hearing that, so what you're saying is that it's not necessarily like, so say like someone like yourselves who are, very well versed in how to do these types of things. So the spirit people can talk through you in their own voice. It wouldn't be Paul's voice or Cyan's voice. It would be their own voices.
That's right.
In their own voice.
So if they used ectoplasm to coat Cyan's voice box, they'd be speaking through her with my deep voice as a male.
It's very disconcerting listening to those.
Yeah, it's
audios.
like this. Initially, it's like a little bit uncomfortable. You're going, I'm not sure about this, but then after a while, it's like, oh, g'day, Bruce, how's it going? Sort of thing. So their name's not Bruce. I'm just saying, it's
that's amazing.
It's better when they show themselves. So we love working with spirit people and the extraterrestrials, obviously, but spirit people actually show themselves over your face, and so that's called transfiguration. And they can use multiple types of energy to do that as well.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, do the spirit people ever have any insight? Now, I know you guys are kind of in constant contact with the Zetas, but do the spirit people ever have insight as to questions about like the ETs? If you ever have a question about the ET, would a spirit person know any information?
No. Basically, the Zetas have told us that they will not enter into spirit realm because they're a different vibration. And if they enter into spirit realm, it'll cause a distortion. And so when we ask spirit people, because we both are direct trance mediums, when we ask the spirit people to come through and they talk through us, when we ask them questions, they go, look, when I was alive, I knew about extraterrestrials, but honestly, in spirit realm, I've not seen any. Right? They said, it's like you, Lynn, or me. If we pass over and go back to spirit realm, people will say, do you know anything about extraterrestrials? Yeah, absolutely. I worked with them when I was alive, but I can't see any around spirit realm now. I've been in spirit realm a few times. When my dad passed over, I was in spirit realm. I went to spirit realm with him. So
interesting. You know. So now, is there a difference between extraterrestrials and what we would maybe refer to as a type of extraterrestrial, which would be an interdimensional being, or are they completely separate types of beings?
No. The thing is, if you've ever astral traveled and you step out of your body, you can actually touch your hand and it feels like a normal hand. Yeah. So your astral body or your body of consciousness actually has feels like a physical form. If you talk to an interdimensional who has a non-corporeal, non-state of matter, they'll also have things like the ability to see themselves in a physical state. That's the thing. So if you're in a completely non-physical state, everything around you would seem to be solid.
Okay.
So there is a difference. Look, in the end, if you think about yourself, you're a being of matter, and the matter is held together by a consciousness. Once your consciousness leaves, your body disintegrates.
Yeah. So you're at. Let me make sure I'm understanding this. So your astral body, is that able to travel interdimensionally or no?
That's a interesting question. Okay, so I'm going to sort of struggle, I think, to explain this. Yeah. Your astral body can move dimensionally, but I believe from my own experience, I'll just talk about my own experience, that there are other facets of consciousness that are used to guide us through those dimensional processes, because I don't have the cognitive ability to move through a lot of those spaces. They hold all their own laws. They hold all of their own nuances, their own facets.
Interesting. Okay, because I've heard people talk about traveling astrally and moving through like portals into potentially a different dimension. And I've always been curious about that. Is it moving to a different dimension, or actually are they just moving to a different space within our same dimension, a different area within our same dimension, but just much further away?
It's all of it. It's everything. So we would start off, if we want to move through, say we're in trance and we've got the Zetas with us, trancing through us, speaking to us, they may want us to go and speak to another race, like a mantis race or the Anunnaki or whatever. They'll take us to a gateway, which is a portal, and then we'll step through that consciously, and then we're totally encompassed by that race. If we step out of our body now, astrally, I can move into what's called real-time space. So real-time astraling, this physical room in it, but it's in its etheric form. I then can move into a different dimensional space, this one again, but in a different timeline. So it could be a parallel timeline or a timeline in the past, where other people were standing in the kitchen and I can listen to them speaking. I can also, as other humans can, of course, move through to other physical races, extraterrestrial races, or you can move through into interdimensional space. Now, all things exist in all points at all times. So you can move through to interdimensional spaces right here, right now. It's not like you've got to drive 15 miles to get there and then do it. All dimensions exist now. I'll give you an example. If you've got a radio and you have a dial on it, it doesn't matter if you change stations, you'll pick up something generally, but all those stations are all on different frequencies, and that's exactly how everything works. So it's all in the same space at the same time.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk a little too, because I know this, because I luckily get to talk with Paul and Cyan just about every week. Love that. So I'm so excited that everybody else is going to have the opportunity to do so too. So you also can channel the Zetas. Can you tell people a little bit about that? And Cyan, you're usually the one that has the conversation with them, correct? Or can you channel them as well?
Yes, in a limited capacity at this point. It's taken me 15 years to get to, how many minutes can I do? Is it 7?
I think you're at 7
long 7 long minutes. and it's really hard work. Whereas Paul can hold them there for an hour and 20 minutes. It used to be longer.
It's 2 hours.
Is it 2 hours?
But an hour and 20 minutes is safe, so I don't get burnt.
But yeah, so I mean, we both sit nearly every day, if not every day, in some capacity, whether it's the Zeta speaking or spirit people talking. And we try to take it in turns, don't we? You sit, then I sit, then you sit, then I sit.
Yeah.
So
what are you having conversations about? Is it just, do you have specific questions sometimes that you're going in with, or are you just kind of like, hey guys, what's going on? What do we need to know today?
Well, they only ever come for a reason. If I sat there with no questions, they just leave. You know, it's hard work to get them here, and so there's always a point or a reason for them to be communicating. Sometimes we have questions from other people. I obviously always have questions about myself, you know, my own experiences with them. Sometimes Paul has questions for them. And then on occasion they do come to tell me something, and it can be about anything. When they speak, though, it will be something serious or of consequence. It won't just be, you know, we thought we'd come and tell you what the weather was like. Whereas the spirit people will come and talk to you about anything, you know, literally anything and everything. You can be talking to them about how they used to bake cakes, or, you know, cook a rabbit up on the pot, you know, a couple of 100 years ago in Ireland, you know. But the Zetas, with them, the conversation is always very defined, very formal. You have to use very carefully structured sentences. You can't use slang words, abbreviations. You can't speak to them about new age type concepts. They don't understand them. So, you know, like the phrases indigo children, crystal children, and all of these. If I said that to them, they wouldn't know what I was talking about. So you have to break these things down, you know, rather than say indigo children, you would talk about children born with consciousness from extraterrestrials. So you have to be careful what language you use with them. Otherwise, they don't understand you. And they also take the words that you say to them literally. So, you know, we have a lot of, what did I once say to them? Something about somebody just had a baby, and I'd said, oh yeah, that baby was freshly baked, you know, fresh fun in the oven, you know, freshly born. And they were horrified. They thought I literally meant that the baby had been cooked in the oven. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I felt terrible because I'd caused them some level of distress.
Let me just clarify that. They thought that, you know, with the maturation process where they create their own containers, they thought that, I know that this is difficult, but they thought that humans were using a different process rather than the natural process of a birthing process. So
it was it was a bit awkward.
But we do get a lot of questions from a lot of people, so we write them down, and Cyan will then ask them. We've got the book, the Zeta Interviews, and that's free. Anyone can download that, and that's about 10% of the discussions that have taken place.
Yeah.
And the Zeta Interviews is about 600 pages.
Yeah, and that's literally the raw transcripts of a number of sittings over a couple of years, where you can see exactly what's being asked and the direct response to those questions. So.
That is fascinating. So on the website, I read the quote in the introduction about how the Zetas understand that they are misunderstood on this planet. So what do they think? Do they think that all humans see them as bad, or what is their understanding of how we see them?
Yeah, I think that, you know, if we think about the greys, there's 63 races for one species, you know, and humans know them as the greys. 62 of those races generally, you know, just working, they're technical, there's multiple different types of races, they all perform a specific function. But there is one race, and they're known as the abductors, and they're the ones that take people against their will. That's why they say that people need to clarify who's actually contacting them, because if you make an assumption that just because somebody has big black eyes and looks grey, that they're from a specific race, then that's a mistake. And here's the other thing: if all the people that are in this chat, they're all hybrids or extraterrestrials, and they've come here and they're existing in a human form, and they're being visited and they're being sampled and tested and all those things that would be taking place with a hybrid, they could make the assumption that they're actually being abducted because they're being taken on craft. Because they're being taken on craft, they're probably not having an opportunity to actively discuss with the beings because the beings see their own races that are in a different form. And so they're seeing that consciousness that exists from that race now in a human form. And because of that, the local mind of that human is filtering all of the experiences through a filtering process. And so that's an issue because for them, and they know that, because when they make an agreement to come here and incarnate or to become manifested in the physical, they know that they're going to lose their ability to remember who they are, and all of the hybrids will forget who they are generally because of the Schumann frequency, the 8.73 hertz. And that what that does is the Schumann frequency is it basically applies a screen memory to all beings that enter this physical realm, beings from spirit realm, beings from extraterrestrial races, whatever. And that's why when people meditate and are in stillness and go up in vibration, that they're able to see and experience. And then once they come out of that meditative state, they drop back down to a grounded state. That grounded state is basically around the Schumann frequency. And you can't remember. So this is why a lot of people, when they're taken or contacted, they think that they're just all being abducted. Everybody's being abducted. And then you mix in with that all of the other things that people believe as well, and what is happening to them, then of course it's a bit of a mess. It is a mess.
Yeah. Okay, I have a tangent I'm going to go off on for a second. I have a question. So they're in Australia, everyone, and so it's morning there. Is there any way, when you were talking, the painting behind you with the triangle on it, there was like a flash of light on it? I don't know if anybody else saw it, and I was just like trying to figure out what that was. So it couldn't be like, could it be a car going by or anything like that?
Yeah, it was probably got like this room's full of windows, so and it could have been a car passing, reflecting the sun.
Okay. Okay, because I was kind of like,
you could pretend it was something awesome, but the truth is, it probably was a car.
If it was something that was noteworthy, I would say, oh, that's the extraterrestrials doing that. But when because we read the energy in the room all the time in our room, and because of that, if something does take place, you know what's going on. So I'll give you an example. You meditate a lot and you sit and you get to know all of your own energy. And then, of course, that's exactly what your guides want. They want you to spend that time. They want you to develop. And then they come into the room automatically because you know your own energy really well. Yeah. You can tell that there's some sort of distortion or ripple effect in the room. And you can then reach into that energy because you've learned to reach into your own energy. And what you can do is you can then seek out what's called the personality of the energy. If that personality happens to be your guide, that then creates a level of contact for you as well. And that's how people actually can contact their guides. But the reason that a lot of people struggle to communicate with spirits and guides and all those sorts of things is because they don't spend any real time understanding their own energy, their own etheric body, and their own field.
Okay. So then what would be, so if someone who's just beginning there, maybe they haven't started meditating or they're like learning to do so, what is it like a very good first beginning step to understanding your own etheric body?
Understanding your own etheric body. Well, yeah, I mean, we all take time to get to know ourselves, don't we? But getting to know our energetic self is a bit of a different process. Yeah. We do a couple of little practical techniques to get people to start feeling their own etheric self, their own energetic body. You can feel it between your hands if you if you bounce the energy, you can feel it on your arm. You can feel the pressure of the energy on your arm coming on here and on your palm. You can feel it everywhere. You can learn to feel it on a plant, an animal. And when you begin to become aware of your own self, when you're sitting in stillness and you're quiet, you can hold your hand up if you like, and you can actually become aware that you can feel the energy around your hand. And then all of a sudden you become aware that you can feel the energy all around you. Now, it's at that point that if
oh no, I think they're frozen. Hopefully they'll come back. I don't know if they can hear me or not. Oh no. If you guys have any questions while we're waiting for
an external energy came to you, a spirit.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I think you came back. You froze up. Yeah.
What was the last words?
You were saying, I heard you say that you could learn to start feeling the energy all around you, and then it started kind of breaking up a little bit after that.
Yeah. So once you're aware of your own energy and you can sense your own energy field, when an external energy, say a spirit guide, comes close to you, you can then feel the energy of that spirit right next to you. Now, whether you feel it as a pressure or a tingle or a heat sensation or a cold sensation, that's an individual thing, and people will experience it differently. But that would be the first stages of learning to get to know your own self. And you have to know your own self before you then step outside of that and seek to learn the energy of spirits and other energies.
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, you just can't tell the difference.
Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
That person's statement, Ghost Dragons, it's interesting because about 11 months ago, the Zetas told us that there was going to be an exponential increase in the astral realm. And that was to do with things like people starting to talk about UAP disclosure, people starting to think about things that were related to extraterrestrial matters. And of course, things that related to, the current pandemic as well. And so as people have become more isolated, more insular, they've had time to think about things, they've had time to meditate, maybe spend more time just online doing what they want to do. And there's been an expansive increase in the astral. And that astral expansion has caused a lot of people to be getting contact with different types of entities and spirits as well. So some people call it the veil between us and the spirit realm. And that veil has become much clearer lately.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I've noticed, and I don't know if this is related, but a lot of people are talking a lot about having much more lucid dreams, much more vivid dreams. Even people that aren't kind of involved in this community at all. I've noticed people are like, I had the craziest dream. It was so realistic. So it's interesting. Something's definitely going on.
Yeah. So definitely, we noticed about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months ago that dreams were becoming really brilliant and really clear, and that there was a lot of discussion now taking place in dreams, not just the normal type dreams. This was as though you were actually, really in it and, not just sort of floating around.
Yeah.
And I kept waking up thinking to myself, there's something going on in the astral,
Yeah, I've noticed that too myself, because a lot of the times I'm one of those people, like, I just don't remember my dreams very well, or they're like, kind of amorphous and like just weird. Like they don't make a whole lot of sense. But lately, I'd say in the past like 6 months to a year, they've been like you're describing, like very vivid, very real. Like I'm very aware that I'm dreaming. I'm having conversations with people. It's really, really fascinating.
It is,
Yeah. Okay. So we have a couple of questions for you. So Mr. Crowley says, my question was, can interdimensionals see ETs and vice versa? And can you see either one while astrally projecting?
Okay. So we'll break that question down. Extraterrestrials can see interdimensional entities because extraterrestrials also sit in a different vibrational frequency. interdimensionals can see extraterrestrials as well, because what they would need to do would be to lower their vibration to speak to a three-dimensional or fourth-dimensional entity. That's the first thing. The spirit realm actually has what's called a nexus point. So if we think of spirit realm as being just a sphere, but at the top of it is a nexus point, which is an entry and exit point. That's where where spirit people are able to access via what's classed as the oversoul. So spirit people go up into the oversoul after about 200 or 300 years. The oversoul then has the ability to then move through the nexus. The nexus is where the celestials and the interdimensionals exist in frequency. And so this is why a lot of people will see angels coming to them into the physical. This is why a lot of people will be aided by angels as well. If people are in trance states, they may see angels. And these angels don't generally have wings. These angels can look like an alabaster stone carved statue or something like that. Or they can be a light that looks very bright and probably brighter or more illuminated than an orb would be. So spirit people are able to also move through, frequency within the vibrational states and also interact with interdimensionals. The reason I mention that is because some hybrids are actually interdimensional entities. So they're not just greys, reptilian, Palladian, all these sorts of things. They're actually the interdimensionals have come down through. They've lowered their vibrational state for a experience in the physical three-dimensional space. But the only way that they could do that was to come down and go through the birthing process and then move into the physical form.
Okay. I have another question too, kind of playing on that idea as well, which is a lot of people ask me, and Enzo, I do see your question, so I will get to that. A lot of people ask me how they can find out, one, if they are a hybrid, and two, if so, of what, let's say species, I guess, like what type of hybrid they are.
Yeah. We do a lot of work with people to find out their point of origin. Our website has all that information about how that can be achieved. It takes me 3 days to actually do that for a person. So there's a large energetic investment to do that. You can't just tell somebody that they're from another race. It doesn't work that way. You need to be able to go back via the etheric thread that the person has, back to the race, and be able to correctly describe to that person all of the social structures of their race, what they specifically perform as a function with that race as well when on planet. And so there's a lot of things around what's called the point of origin. So yeah, it's definitely possible. We do it. We probably do one a week.
Generally just one a week.
I just want to go back to the previous question where Mr. Crowley asked, can you see those beings in the astral as well?
Yes.
You can, but I think that what would take place is that because the astral body has its own filtering mechanisms, you may still be, because you are generally attached back, via consciousness to your physical body, there could be some aspects of your consciousness which would be filtering what you're seeing as well. Whereas once you're physically separated from your physical form, your body's passed over, it's no longer existing, all the filtering drops away.
Okay.
Just wanted to get back there.
Okay, yeah, no, wonderful. Okay, so Enzo's question, Paul and Cyan, your description of your contacts with the Zetas sound very positive. Are there other entities out there that are less than friendly?
Absolutely. So within the astral realm is the negative entities that people would class as. Some people have had great experiences with reptilians. I've met some as well that were great. Just because that you're a reptilian doesn't mean you're bad. That's not what I'm saying. Just like saying that all humans are bad, we know that that's not true. So I've encountered people come to us who have attachments and they need to be cleared. And those attachments are generally based around negative entities. As other people have said, we have found that it's based around behaviour. I heard Samantha talking to you online Yeah, and she was talking about things like sugar and different types of. We find exactly the same thing, that people's behaviours lend themselves to actually moving down into a different vibrational space. People need to, if they want to cleanse themselves, they need to move up into a different space by changing their behaviours. We find that negative entities, like, say, the collectors, and the collectors are a race that exists in the astral, and even other lower forms of energies that exist in the astral, attach themselves to people via consciousness and via energy, by the behaviours, and they're drawn to specific people by their behaviours as well. And I'll give you an example of what's classed as a non-negative entity that you wouldn't know unless you knew what the race was. So there's a race called the Trillions, and the Trillions, actually, the only form that they hold is like a three-dimensional square. Now, these three-dimensional squares, the Trillions, they're amplification beings. Now, these beings, when they come to a human, what they do is they amplify the human's behavior. So if the person's negative or angry or whatever, that person will now start to really generate a lot of those negative behaviors. And somebody will go, oh, you've got a negative entity or a reptilian with you. No, they don't. They've actually just got an amplification process with them. If the person that it was attached to was a loving person, you would see or sense a much larger amount of love coming from the person. So this is why it's really important to understand all these different races and that they're not just based around what humans' belief structures are. We get a lot of the beings that we know about, they're actually brought to us by the Zetas and introduced to us, and then they're explained to us so that we know that when they come, what their function is, because many races provide functions to humans.
Interesting. So now these trillion, these square box-shaped entities, are they conscious beings?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
so their role is to amplify only, and that they use their consciousness to find every single nuance or facet of your consciousness and then expand that out. And so it's like, in some way, that you had expanded out your etheric body and are now displaying your true nature, which is probably, but I think at some point there's this, you see these movies where people get these LED things and it shows what you're thinking. It's probably something not like that, but, like people would go, that person's behavior, that's exactly the way they behave, but it's now amplified.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. So I know people are going to ask this. How would they know if they have one of these trillion beings around them, or would they even know that they have one around them?
No. This is what we find with a lot of people is they come to us and they go, look, we think I've got something with me or whatever. And I'll say, well, what have you been doing? And they go, oh, everything was fine. And then I went on the internet and I bought myself a gin. And I said, pardon, could you just say that again?
Yeah.
Go, oh, I bought myself a gin and bought it for protection. And I'm saying, right. And so has your life been fine since then? Is there any reason why you've come? And they'll say, yeah, well, it all started off fine. Yeah. And then, of course, now everything's going sideways for me. So that's one thing. You get other people, they'll pick up a Ouija board or whatever, and they don't have any idea how to use it. That's probably just the worst thing. Yeah. If you know how to use one, it's not really an issue. And they will just play with it. They maybe even have a few drinks while they do it and a bit of yada yada. And next thing you know, they've got a problem. And they come and they go, look, I think I've got a problem. Well, this is the issue, isn't it? Like, it's our behaviors that draw these things to us. I could tell you a story of a person who was using ayahuasca and they went on a journey. They went interdimensional. The person was in my house about 4 days ago, and Cyan met them. And the person met an interdimensional entity, and as the ayahuasca wore off, the interdimensional space and the interdimensional consciousness came back with the person and got trapped within the three-dimensional space.
Oh, wow.
That person then felt like they had a physical lump here and they couldn't get rid of it. And they always kept pressing it because they felt they had something jammed there. Now, what I'm about to say could be a bit scary for people, so it's a trigger warning, okay? If you've never heard of this sort of stuff before, I'm just letting you know, be careful, right? So what happened was the Zetas came and they said to me, that person that was in the house, we're going to show you something, and Paul, don't be scared. Now, when someone says to you, don't be scared, it's like, okay, I'll try not to be if it's possible. And the person's eyes rolled back in their head and there was nothing there. They were just empty sockets. 2 red glowing orbs rolled out and of their head, and that's all there now was 2 red. I had people in the room, thankfully, that saw this. Cyan met one of them the other day.
I met 2 of them.
2 of them that saw this happen. Yeah. This person's head was wrenched back and this steam came out of their mouth as the interdimensional entity was released from the person. And there was no danger or anything, but it was more about the fact that the person had been holding the interdimensional entity in consciousness in their own physical form because they had journeyed into the interdimensional space. They had created a heterodyne situation where they were in symbiotic consciousness with the entity. As they moved back into the three-dimensional space and the ayahuasca wore off, they then held that entity within their own space.
Wow. Well, I'm sure the entity was happy to be released.
Yeah, look, it was. It was actually a pretty happy situation, to be honest. I know it sounds like something like The Exorcist or anything, but I'm just saying that sometimes when people think that they've sort of got some level of possession, it's actually got nothing to do with that. That you have to ask people. You got to be really careful. What have you been doing? What have you been taking? What sort of, what have you done that's caused this to take place?
Wow. Well, we have someone coming on with us has a question for you. Mr. Crowley, aka Anthony, welcome.
Hey, how are you guys?
Hey, Anthony, how's it going?
Well, I kind of, it's kind of like too much to type out. I didn't want to go through all that. I'm kind of really deep into the vibrational thing. I'm an ex-Air Force sensor tech.
Oh, nice.
And I've done a lot of work with that. It's just I've gone down a rabbit hole with the whole vibration thing. What importance do you feel that plays with us as humans? Are we evolving vibrationally? Is our vibration changing as a whole? That's why we're seeing these things. That's why we're being able to interact more with these things.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, listen, Anthony, you don't mind me calling you Anthony?
No, go ahead.
Okay, great. It's interesting. The Zetas have shown us that we are conscious beings of consciousness, and we actually exist around ourselves. We actually observe ourselves 24 hours a day. So if I say to somebody, what did you do yesterday at 1 o'clock? Instantly they get this image in their mind and they actually can see themselves doing something. And so they've observed their own behavior and they're doing it all of the time. Once we understand that we are beings of consciousness and vibration, then of course we're able to move into that space, and not just that limited space of filtering and belief structures, these sorts of things. Through meditation and stillness, we can move into ourselves. And as we move more into ourselves and our true nature, we're able to then interact with other beings. And these other beings, and some of them have physical states, other beings do not. And that means that we're able to learn from those beings. And I think where the people get lost is in the woo. And I like the woo as well. But the woo is where people go, you just need to do this and, send up a prayer. And there's nothing wrong with praying. No, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, and that's what will get you there. That actually won't get you there. That'll get you noticed by it. If you pray to God or whatever, that's fine. But it's more about understanding that if you want to develop yourself and you want to shift in yourself, then you need to be stepping back away from all of the things that distract you and that call your attention. And when we do that, and when we place ourselves in isolation just for 30 minutes a day, and we start to seek out our own energetic nature, our own consciousness, then we're able to move through those vibratory states. We can see spirit people much better. We can communicate much better. We can also all communicate with extraterrestrials and other races as well.
Yeah, I've taken up Buddhism in the last couple months, and
Yeah,
I've
lovely,
started
yeah.
deep into meditation, and I've just kind of introspectively started to notice, a lot of different things. And as far as the vibrational thing, I thought it'd be very interesting if you could take somebody premeditative and measure their vibration and
Yeah.
see afterwards, what the difference is, and when you
Yeah.
start actually being able to interact and experience other things. I just thought that would be kind of a cool experiment if it would be possible.
Yeah. So talking about pre-vibration, that's actually called mind mapping. And so I've done mind mapping myself. We use the little sensors, and you can, so in a non-meditative, non-trance state, you can measure your specific brainwave patterns. As you move into a meditative state, you'll notice changes in different spaces of the mind as they activate. And then, of course, we go through different states, delta, beta, up to theta. And then, of course, what they're looking for is the person in trance really allowing an entity to communicate through them? What parts of the brain are now active when the person says that they're in what's classed as a temporary possession? And a temporary possession is what we call trance states.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And so you actually can map a person's vibration, and you can map all of the changes as well that the person goes through as they develop and move into trance states as well.
Okay, I did not know that, so I appreciate that answer. That's basically all I wanted to ask. I just didn't want to type all that out. So,
Thanks, Anthony. That's great.
That's awesome.
thank you,
I've
guys.
heard of mind mapping, so I'm glad you asked that, Anthony, because I had no idea like what mind mapping actually was, and it's fascinating. Absolutely.
Yeah, it could be called mind mirror, the mirror mapping or something. But I mean, somebody just handed me the machine with the book and said, "Here, read this." So I went, "Okay, I'll stick that on my head." As you do, why not? And did it.
I didn't want it.
Sion didn't want to do it, and I said, "No, it's fine. If you can hold your own vibrational space," and that's what the Zetas call strength of mind. So the Zetas will test people. If you're a Zeta hybrid, you'll be tested by them. Your own race, if you're a hybrid, will test you as well. And what they class that is as strength of mind training. Yeah, I would guess that also the military would perform that sort of thing. If you've been in the military, then of course they do specific things to you to break you down and build you up, and that also creates a very strong but trained mind in regards to that.
All right, yeah, I can bounce out now. I just wanted to get that out of here. Thank you for bringing me on.
Thanks so much for coming on. So that's really interesting. So did the Zetas tell you, or do you know, someone who is a hybrid, would they have a different kind of base state than someone who is not a hybrid, I guess?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about that? You can talk. I'll talk about it. So generally what happens is when you are a spirit person and you come into the physical form via birthing, your vibrational state sits, normally you're 100% spirit person. But when the extraterrestrials want to create a hybrid, what they do is they get the permission of the parents, from the higher self of the parents. So the parents are asleep, they talk to the higher self of the parents. If the parents are in agreement and only in agreement, then the next step is to get the agreement of the spirit people. So, of course, once the consummation process takes place, conception process takes place, then, of course, that's where spirit people enter in. Now, at that point, the higher self of the parents that have made the creation of the child, the spirit person knows that there's going to be an agreement with an extraterrestrial race. When the consciousness comes in, it provides a blended symbiotic level of consciousness. And then, of course, that creates a different level consciousness. Example, and I always use the old glass of water.
Yeah.
If this is just pure spirit and extraterrestrials, just a couple of drops of blue ink, if I swirl it in there, you're probably not going to see much difference. But if I put in more and more and more ink at some point in time, it won't be clear anymore. And so depending on the level of consciousness that the extraterrestrials will be placing in that hybrid's symbiotic relationship will depend on the vibrational state of the person. Now, it doesn't mean that hybrids are all up here and everybody else is down there. We all like a beer. Yeah, we all want to eat some pizza and we all love chocolate, right? Mm-hmm. So the thing is, it's more about moving into those states when you need to. And then a process I'm sure you'd have heard about is Merkaba.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do you want to explain that, though, for people who haven't heard what that is?
The Merkaba is the shell that is around the consciousness. It's like an eggshell, if we talk about eggs. And it, of course, the Merkaba comes with us from one existence to the other. Inside the Merkaba is all of our symbols. All of those symbols represent all of our abilities. And we're presented with one symbol when we first incarnate. And if we work our way through that symbol, we can then start to work through our abilities, right? And as the Merkaba releases more and more symbols, we can then somehow multidimensionally take those symbols and then create more abilities. Example, one of the symbols may be psychic abilities. Another symbol could be mediumship. So once you've got the two symbols active, you can combine them together and use the two to perform healing. The healing symbol then comes into existence in your energetic framework, and you're starting now to build this multidimensional reality in regards to your abilities from the symbols that came with you from either spirit realm or from the extraterrestrial races.
So I also have a question about kind of going back to what we were talking about before with people asking, how can they, if they are hybrid, or actually, let me go back a second, because I think we kind of touched on this yesterday when we were chatting, not on the show. What is the difference between extraterrestrial origins? Because it seems to me most people on this planet have some sort of extraterrestrial origins or genetics, or however we want to word that, versus someone who is a hybrid. What is the difference there? Sorry if you hear my cat, by the way.
No, we love animals. We've got birds everywhere. So everybody is an extraterrestrial. That's because before humans existed, they had to be placed here. And my theory is that if there's 10 million species on the planet, for them all to crawl out of primordial ooze somehow is just, to me, it's a little bit difficult to believe that. The thing is that I'm just trying to think of something. I actually just now have somebody with me, which is a problem.
Oh, well, if they have something to say, they're more than welcome to share.
Hang on.
That's why I didn't want to speak.
That's why you didn't want to speak. Because you couldn't. All right. So, okay. So everybody's an extraterrestrial, except for the fact that some people are from different extraterrestrial races. Now, in the beginning, when humans were created, they were created with specific types of DNA. And that DNA then, of course, was based around the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki then used different types of hominid functions and features that from entities that already existed in the biosphere. And then, of course, they combined those intentional DNA. I've got them telling me stuff. It's a bit hard to actually do this. So normally when I'm in trance, they can just speak for themselves. But because they're telling me different words, it's like blending things together. Yeah. So, of course, we've got this intentional DNA. Now, the intentional DNA is where the race, the creator race, creates the species, which is the human species. When we then talk about hybrids, we've got what is known as human DNA, which is actually extraterrestrial DNA, but of course, there's also the beings that it was originally created from. Plus, you've got the hybrid or the extraterrestrial consciousness from the race that you incarnated from. So now you've got various methods and forms of communication. You've got various symbiotic relationships of consciousness that exist within the form. And that's the difference between being purely from spirit realm in the form, but in an extraterrestrial DNA-based container, yeah? And then, of course, so it's all based in consciousness, the whole thing. Is there really a difference? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But you would have to ask yourself then, well, is a person who's from spirit realm but with extraterrestrial physiology, we'll call that, are they able to abide into interdimensional frameworks, communication spaces and that? Probably, and maybe, I don't know. But whereas you could generally make the assumption, and which is maybe not a good thing to do, but you could make an assumption that a hybrid person would have a better vibrational state and the potentiality for those hybrids to actually connect to those interdimensional frameworks, those extraterrestrial frameworks as well.
Okay, so is it possible for a hybrid person to not know that they are hybrid?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the killer. So because a lot of people don't realize that they're hybrids, they've got some sort of inkling that something's not right. That's the first thing. And some of the big tells are, you know that you're from off planet. You just know, but you don't know that it's true about yourself. And because you don't know that it's true about yourself, then of course what takes place is that you feel that you are distanced from this physical reality. Now, it's some sort of, there's a special word for it. It's like a dysphoria, but it's more about the fact that a lot of people that are hybrids, I'll give you an example. I used to go to the shop and when somebody would ask for $20, I'd say, oh, you mean one of the red notes? I didn't know what the number was. It was just in Australia, $20 is a red note. So I just give them a red one. Now, this was before the internet, before all these sorts of things. So I didn't read this anywhere. I just knew in myself that when I wanted to pay for something, I had to pay with certain colors. Okay. Yeah. And so hybrids act differently in different social situations. They can sometimes read the energy of lots of people in the room. They're like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk to anybody. Actually, or you go shopping, you go, I don't want to be here. You can hear the buzzing of the fluorescent lights above you in the shop and you think, I got to get out of here. And so people don't know that they're hybrids and they think that they've got all these specific, and not in all cases, obviously, sensory issues. And those sensory issues are like an overload to them. And so, of course, what are you going to do if you're overloaded? You're going to drink, take drugs, do whatever it is that you probably could be doing. That's your decision to do those sorts of things.
Yeah.
To try to lessen the effect on you as a person, because you do not feel that you can cope with all of the external information that you're receiving.
Yeah, that makes sense. So as you were talking, I just had this weird, and I don't know why this popped into my head, but we'll go with it. And I would never consider myself a hybrid. Honestly, I've never even really thought about it. But last year I got a concussion. And with that concussion, and it lasted for quite a while, the effects of it, I could not tolerate. This is what reminded me of it when you were talking about the buzzing of the fluorescent lights and sound, and everything was just I wanted to isolate inside my house because all of this external stimuli was just too overwhelming, and literally caused my head to hurt. Now, is that kind of what to me, that was what it was reminding me of when you were describing that? Is it that type of a situation?
Yeah, it is. Another thing is I'll give you some simple examples. I've just seen ghost dragons say that once a month they dump. I didn't realise that I was affected by the moon And so years and years ago, when I was a young bloke, I'd noticed around, a certain time of the month that I would, suddenly just start to feel really aggravated or anxious or whatever. And one day I was sitting with my friends down on the beach having a few beers, and I looked up and I thought, oh, it's a full moon. That's interesting. And I really feel uncomfortable in myself. And I waited, and I didn't look at the calendar. I didn't know when the next full moon was. And I started to feel that way again. Next thing I went, hey, it's a full moon. It's another moon. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? This is bizarre. Well, this is actually a known phenomenon, believe it or not. I've worked with a lot of people, and they've said, oh, you wait till the full moon, you're going to see some real stuff happen, with people. And they're right. Generally, we're about 60% water. We're fluid. If the moon can affect the ocean and the tides and all the rest of it, it can definitely affect us as well. And this is this has got nothing to do with being a hybrid. This is just about the fact that you're being affected on a molecular level.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. I used to be a therapist, and at one point I worked on an inpatient locked unit, and I've also worked in the hospitals. And man, full moons, it was just like craziness ensued. It was just
Time to
a
rock and
whole
roll,
different
man.
ballpark. It was
Seen
crazy.
it, been there, seen it.
Yeah, even in the ER, you get all kinds of craziness. Like in the ER when it's a full moon, it's just like, whew. You got to prepare. Like everybody in the hospital knows it. They're like, okay, it's going to be a full moon, guys. Like buckle in. It's crazy.
Did you want to? Do you want me to send you a couple of photos for us?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to see them, and I'm sure everybody else would as well.
Just gonna have to find it. I think what I'll do is I'll send it to you via Messenger.
Okay, yeah. Let me pull that up really quick.
I've got to find them first. Hang on.
Yeah, no worries. I might have. Let's see. You sent me some before.
Did
I was
I?
going to say, last week, didn't we send you some
Yeah,
stuff?
let me see. I'm sure I still have them on here. Let me see if those were the same ones. Was it when you were doing the group? I think it was like a group something, and you could see the ET
That big blue
face.
sphere, yeah.
Yeah.
The blue sphere, yeah.
Yeah, let me grab. Okay, here those are, I think. So this is. Let me zoom in. Can I get? See if I download them. I could probably see them better because then I can zoom in. And then there was the one with your face, and there was the green, I think, around it. Let me see. Here it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just thought if we talked about them, then people could understand the difference between energy and ectoplasm. And
they're fascinating. They are absolutely fascinating. So
I sent you a picture of where the craft landed as well. So.
Oh, did you? Okay. Did you just now send that to me?
Yeah, on Messenger. Yeah.
Okay, let me grab that. Oh, here it is. Okay, I see it. Yeah, let me grab that as well so I can show everyone. Okay. Yeah, because that won't let me go back and forth. Okay. Sorry, guys. Let's see.
Cool.
Share.
We've got plenty of time.
Okay, so this, we'll do that one first. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, you guys will find these really interesting. Okay, so we have, oh, here we go. Oh, come on. Okay. So this, can everybody see that? Let me, I'll make it really big so they can kind of see it. And let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. So they'll still be able to hear you talking.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Just explain.
So that's you can see in outside of the blue sphere.
We're here.
I'm sitting inside the blue sphere. That's the first thing.
Check your eyes out.
And if you have a look at my eyes, you'll notice that my facial structure has completely changed.
Yeah.
That the zetas are trying to show themselves over the top of my face. That's the first thing. So
this is your face right here, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So my eyes have now gone completely black, and the people on the outside that are away from the sphere, and that's called a synthetic quantum environment, they're able to sit and see the being inside and talk to them.
the sphere is the blue energy that you can see sort of forming that semicircle across the middle of the photo.
Yeah. And so a person can use changing their vibration with training, interact with spirits as well as ET, and they can show themselves over the face and communicate through them as well.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's,
let me see. Let me grab the other one as well. Hold on. I'm going to zoom in on this one because this one's really interesting. So let me remove that one, and then we're going to. Okay. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah. So this is not photoshopped or anything like that. There's no need for any of that. So you'll notice, unfortunately, coming out of my nose is like a cord, and the cord has been built to go around my head, and the extraterrestrials are using that as a framework, and that framework is like a satellite dish, or, if we're going to use human terminology. You can even see just above my forehead, as part of that ring, that there's a little extraterrestrial face staring straight towards the camera. That may be a bit difficult to see, but yeah, so that's the sort of technologies that they can use in regards to people in connecting to a person. So they can, we've got multiple pictures of this sort of stuff. Spirit people use this as well. So spirit people will use the person's life force and create an ectoplasmic voice box and then speak for themselves. Yep.
It does look like a helmet, doesn't it?
Yeah. It is. It looks like that. The actual structures, if you'll notice them, they're actually joined into the temporal lobe areas. And so they connect into a person's consciousness that way as well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You've seen pics like that before. That's good. Yeah. We used to video everything, but we don't anymore. It's just not, we can't be bothered.
They don't use that process so much anymore, do
No, they don't use that process much. It's more about those are more physical based processes where they're using the life force of the person. I'll give you an example. There's multiple ways that hybrids are contacted when a craft comes. If you're taken on board a craft and some things need to happen to you, you've got to be changed in frequency. You've got to go from matter through matter. So physical body has to be taken on board craft. So you've got to be taken through physical structures. Once you're on craft, you've got to be changed in a time frame, a space-time framework. We can discuss that another time, but it's all about what's classed as compression. And compression, whether it be time or compression in regards to ectoplasmic forms, are used by extraterrestrials to communicate with their hybrids. So you could be easily if you're being contacted or taken, you can be taken astrally, consciously, or you can be taken or connected to in a way using your ectoplasm or your life force as well.
Interesting. And so that's what that ring was, is that them connecting to your...
Yeah, so they were teaching me initially how to contact them. That was the thing. Okay. And so Enzo is saying, is this tiring for you afterwards? Yeah, so yeah, you can only do this once every 48 to 72 hours. If you try to do this more than that, you will become unstable. It's very dangerous.
I was going to say, after my 7 minutes, after my 7 whole minutes of holding them there where they're communicating, I need at least 2 days afterwards to get over it. At least 2 days.
And I remember you telling me too, another time we were talking about this, was that the blue sphere that we saw in that first picture. Let me pull that up again so I can. That the people that were sitting around, didn't you say they could feel the heat from it, or they could get
Yeah.
burned from it.
You talked about it a while ago. I'm just going to have to pop out for a second.
You can grab some more water on your way back. Yeah, we had a sitting only last week, and if a sitter is a person, we call them sitters. If a person is sat too close to that sphere, you know, they're going to become very hot, very tired. They're going to, their consciousness level is going to drop down to the point, you know, where they could easily pass out. You know, when it can be extremely intense. It takes a long time to get used to their energy. Paul used to get burned every time he sat. He would get like red, almost like, you know, not sunburn where you're blistered or anything, but, you know, like you've been out in the sun just a bit too long and your face has gone all red. Yeah. So, yeah, I used to get that too as well. That's lessened now, thankfully. But just a moment ago when he had somebody with him, the heat coming from him, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. It's hot enough already up here, let alone that.
Yeah, that's crazy. So now, so you guys used to have that happen, but you don't now. So is that
it still can happen if they hold the connection slightly too long than they used to. But they've gotten better at what they're doing with me through working with Paul for so long, and so it's very rare that we get the reddened look afterwards now. But it does still happen from time to time.
Wow.
Definitely.
That's fascinating, because I was wondering, is it something like on your end that you guys are getting more used to handling the energy, but it sounds like maybe it's also on their end as well, them kind of learning how to temper it a little bit.
Well, let me just explain
what I'm basically.
I'm an experiment.
You literally
well, the thing is that they've learned a lot. That's what I'll say. And in learning that, they've refined the ways that they contact people. So, you know, the Zetas always tell me to tell everybody you are more. You have much more potential. You don't need to believe in the negative aspects of yourself. You can be more, and that's so important to understand. When we understand that, then of course we are able to then move into those new spaces that we create for ourselves. We understand that we're not held in any specific space by other entities and all these things. So with the training that I underwent, and other people do as well, as long as the training provides you some level of clarity and that you are moving into a strength of mind state, then you know that the entities that are working with you are the entities that are proper entities. If all you're doing is bumping along the bottom of the riverbed and not actually getting anywhere, and that there's still a fairly, you know, high level of confusion in regards to what contact and what's going on, then of course that needs to be clarified, and that's what we do with the point of origin stuff. But they have learnt a lot from interacting with both of us. I would suggest, though, that every person has what's called a finite boundary that you cannot go past. So myself is 2 hours that I can have them around me, and then after that I'll start to get physical reactions of being burnt, those sorts of things. That helps when I have to approach a craft. I don't get burnt when I approach a craft, whereas if I took another human with me, their ability to withstand being burnt would be just nothing. It'd be minimal at best. That's why they have to, this is all to do with time and compression. When you are taken aboard a craft, you're taken from, say, a space of 1 to a space of 10. And so the time function is 10 times faster. Because you're vibrating at a much faster rate, your cellular body doesn't understand, and it starts to present itself in ways that you feel physically unwell. The next day, after you've been contacted or taken, you'll feel psychologically unwell, physically unwell. There's a whole lot of things that go along with being abducted or contacted, and things like your immune systems could fail, or you could develop chronic fatigue syndrome.
Interesting. So now, when you were saying before about you'll know you're working with the appropriate beings or the right beings for you, and I'm assuming that can be different for different people, that different beings work well with different people. When you're still in a state of confusion and not necessarily understanding it, but then you kind of get to a point where you're starting to evolve. Is that just kind of in your general understanding of things? Is that what you're referring to? Like understanding of this phenomena?
Well, I think what happens is that it's like a friendship, isn't it? You start to develop a friendship with a person, and you can relax when you're talking to them. Yeah. You can feel that you can be authentic with them as well. I'm not saying people aren't being authentic, but as you gain trust in a friendship, then of course what happens is you also can move into your own abilities. And when they then say to you, look, I want to show you something, don't be nervous. You can trust that you're going to be safe in that experience. Or, come on board craft, we want to show you something. Yes, no problem. We don't have negative entities or, what you would say like reptilians or whatever. They would try to access our space, but they can't. That's the first thing. We don't get trained by them. We know the beings that are training us. And I just say to other people out there that if they listen to this, that just evidence the beings that are working with you. Because the mistake that a lot of people make is they don't evidence them properly. And then, of course, we have spirits that are pretending to be extraterrestrials. And people go, oh, yeah, I'm being contacted by ET. And they're actually just being contacted by trickster spirits.
Interesting. Yeah, it definitely, the reason I was asking is it definitely resonated with me, because obviously, our understanding of things is, our own experience helps us understand a lot more. But I'd never heard anybody say that, but it made so much sense to me because I know I had in meditations have had some interactions with other beings, and there would be like little snippets of things that I would be like, oh, okay, that's really interesting and fascinating, but I wasn't able to put it all together in terms of my own experiences, right? So I'd just be like, well, that's interesting information, but I don't know how to apply that or what I'm being told this for. But so for me, I'm one of those people, obviously, that has had very positive interactions with the reptilians. Once I started working with the reptilians, so much started to make sense. And I was able to kind of access so much more information about my own experiences. So when you said that, it like clicked because I was like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's fascinating.
But I would suggest to anybody, it doesn't matter who they're working with, it doesn't matter what race, that you say to that race, can you introduce me to other races?
Yeah.
You see, because if they won't, then they don't have your best interests at heart. It doesn't matter how good you feel about them. If they won't introduce you to other races that will also teach you, then you have to ask yourself, well, what is their agenda? So I would say to the Zetas, can I meet this race or a specific race, whatever? They'll say, yes, of course.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And there was a question. Here we go. Mr. Crowley had another question. Do you ever get curious when you project and just go see things that interest you?
Oh yeah, I'm all over this.
I would be too.
If anybody can get in trouble, I think I can. So when I project, sometimes I think, oh, I know, I'll just go to the edge of the universe. Just why not? And or I'll go, oh, that looks interesting over there. I'll go over there, and or go and visit an alien base that a race that I shouldn't go and visit. And so I definitely have caused myself some very interesting contact issues, because if you are viewing another race and you don't have sort of the permission to be there, you can expect that the next day they're coming to your house.
Yeah, they're going to do the same to you. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So did you go to the edge of the universe? And if so, what was there?
It was amazing. It was just unbelievable. So it was this, I think the only explanation I've got is my mind's capacity to understand which was very limited. It was this cracking and hissing and this edge that was moving towards into a void, nothingness. And it didn't matter where you looked along the edge, it was all moving into nothingness. And there was all these infinite amount of tendrils, like little octopus tendrils, all going out, feeling into the void, trying to feel where the universe was growing into, right? And so I stayed there, and I thought, as you do, what if I went over the edge into the void? Right?
Oh.
So I've gone, I'll just go over the edge and just have a peek. But as I went over the edge, I actually came back up inside myself.
Huh.
And I sat back and I thought, how did I get back here? I don't even know how I got back, but yeah.
So you got back inside, like your physical body, your awareness
Yeah.
was like.
So when I went over and,
Yeah.
tried to go underneath the undulation.
Yeah.
I just turned back up inside myself.
You're braver than I am. I don't think I would. I'd be like, what if I get lost? What if I get stuck in this void?
That's happened. I've been lost. It's okay. You get back.
Wow.
You can trigger returns with your physical body. It's not a problem. So because you're connected with your physical form, it doesn't matter where you are. Your physical form can bring you back if you trigger a movement.
Oh, okay. So just like moving a finger or something like that will bring you back.
Yeah, it's like when people when they have sleep paralysis, and now they're in some sort of funky, horrible situation. If you learn to move your finger, then of course you can break out of it.
Yes. This is a question I'm pretty sure you're going to like. I wonder if that fits with the theory that we're creating the universe with thought and awareness.
Yeah, of course. Because the entities that are behind all of this, the people known as, 0-point consciousness or, source energy or God, they're the ones that are, this is all a projection for them. Uh-huh. So we're just part of the projection. And when we then travel inside their projection, they make us come back up inside ourselves because they're having that experience as well. No use us going back to them.
Wow, that's fascinating. Mr. Carly says, weekend retreat with Paul and Cyan. I've told them several times that I'm moving in. So that's all there is to it.
We do weekend retreats, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Trip to Australia. I love it. So these, I'm going to get into the big questions now. These beings that, oh, wait, hold on. What is Dave saying? Maybe we simply are the universe, and currently it has a limit because our understanding indeed has limits.
Yeah, absolutely. You are the universe.
Wow. So these 0-point beings, we are a part of them, or we are them. Is that
you are an extended facet of these beings. So each component is an individuated form. And they are in denial. The source consciousness is in denial.
Or in denial of what?
In denial of its existence now in this form. So we believe we actually all exist in this form, whereas we actually don't exist. But that's a debate, So, imagine God or source consciousness says, you know what, I'm going to create an opposite to myself. I'm not matter, so I'll create matter. It creates an opposite of itself. And then it extends itself into that matter to exist in infinite forms. Yeah. The only way that it can actually learn about its infinite self is to not recognize its external form.
Yeah.
And in not recognizing its external form, it can then learn from itself. We've actually had one of them come and speak through myself and another person.
Wow. And
talk about that.
That's fascinating. Okay, so that gets me into kind of a different train of thought. Big debate in some folks, absolutely. But it's fascinating. Right. It's fascinating. So, do the ETs, and I know this obviously is going to be dependent on each kind of race is going to have probably their own ideas, but let's just speak specifically about the Zetas. Like, do they have a specific idea about God or source consciousness, or do they have religions like we do?
No. So that for two things there. When I was with the Zetas once, I said, "Tell me about God." And they said, "Okay, we'll show you." And so we moved into this infinite space in the universe, surrounded by galaxies and constellations. And they said, "You see that light over there?" I said, "Yeah, I can see that." They said, "That's what we believe source consciousness is." They said, "We can't go near it." And I couldn't understand what that meant. until I moved next to source consciousness myself and started to realize that in doing so, I had to give up my individuated form. And so they don't want to give up their individuated form, their consciousness, so they don't go near source. And that's how I started to understand that source consciousness has placed itself in denial for the extended experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that makes sense. It's kind of like, when we come into these lifetimes, it wouldn't do us much good to remember where we came from, because what lessons would we really learn? We need to come in kind of as a blank slate to learn, right?
It would defeat the object of coming here in the first place, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so let's kind of speaking of things we don't remember, another topic that a lot of people have struggled with, and I know that you have dealt with this with experiencers as well, which is the anger and the fear, all of those really strong emotions that come with feeling as though they're being abducted against their will. And some are very adamant that this is against my will. I did not agree to this. Do you think that everyone has agreed to it at some point in time on some level, or are there some beings, as you were talking earlier about some species of greys that are known as the abductors, are there some that are abducting people against their will?
Yeah, there definitely is.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're trying to coerce humans into believing specific things. It's not extraterrestrials that just do this. It's also spirit people. The trickster spirits, negative spirits, earthbound spirits will also try to get people to do specific things against their will. This is the thing. Unless somebody feels that you are sovereign and that you are an individuated consciousness with all of the rights that you should have, if they don't abide by that, then of course they are going against your free will. Now, the Zetas have made a statement which a lot of people struggle with, but things like you've all got free will right up until you don't. Now, when we look at, say, any situation in our lives where we thought we were making decisions about ourselves, and then next thing you know, somebody else came in and overrode what we felt was our rights, then of course they've overridden our free will, haven't they, in doing so? Yeah. And so that's why we spend time with people working out who is contacting them. And if we find out that it's, say, abductors, we then place boundaries around that person so that they can't be abducted.
Oh. Now, are these, I'm assuming, like energetic boundaries?
Yeah. So it's not just energetic boundaries. We will then seek discussions with races, and those races will interact with the race that's taking that person. Oh, okay. And then say basically cease and desist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So is there only one race that's doing this, or are there multiple races that are the abductors?
Look, this is the thing. It's up to an individualized process. This is why it's so important for people to evidence their contact. We can't just go, look, that one race there, they do that.
Yeah.
Because we know that humans do it.
Right.
We know that certain reptilian races do it. We know that certain grey race does it. We know that certain collector entities in the astral attach technologies to humans as well. We know that humans have etheric implants. And so when we look at this, we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of the contact, firstly? Yeah. Or what is the purpose of the implant? If the purpose is to provide a teaching methodology or whatever, then of course the person can say, well, I may not be agreeing to this, but in the end it may be beneficial for me. But if of course the technology that is attached to them or the implant is nefarious, then of course it needs to be removed. That's why we need to be cognizant of what we're doing. We're not moving into spaces cosmically where we can just walk in and just pretend that we know what we're doing. We need training, and that training is classed as heterodyning. And so when we're in a heterodyne space with races, and the races are teaching us different methods, then of course we can use that teaching to then meet other races as well. We can move into those natural spaces with other races as an educated consciousness.
And I'm assuming that, and maybe I'm wrong in this, so please correct me if I am, that other experiencers, especially those who are in contact with whatever race it is that they're interacting with, could you then ask them as an experiencer to also help teach you these things as well?
Yeah, you can ask any entity that has your best interests at heart to teach you anything. Someone's asked a question, Mr. Crowley, did you just say the Greys are yeah, so the Greys are a species. They've got 63 races, 62 of them are part of the collective consciousness of their specific race. They do not have a spirit realm. That's something we haven't got into, but yeah. But yes, I did say that the abductors or the Greys are a specific race.
Yeah. Now, do the species of Greys, or the different races, I should say, come from similar areas, or are they dispersed throughout the galaxy or the universe?
They're all dispersed. So they're not, well, when we say galaxy, if you talk about the reticulum, then of course you've got one or two, or say actually even 5 races. Now, we don't know the 62 races, right? I only know the abductors. I've met them, unfortunately, a few times. That didn't go down too well. The other races that we've met, as we have needed to meet them.
It's only been 4 or 5
others. And we were never we never asked to meet them until a situation occurred, and we said, well, can you explain to us how does the race decide ethically what they would do with and around the cosmos? And they said, oh, there's a race for that. And that race, that those beings are also incarnating as humans, and those beings debate ethically over every single nuance of a movement that takes place to another race in regards to first disclosure, all those things.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay, so since you mentioned first disclosure, everybody always wants to know about that. Do you have any information on that from the Zetas?
Yeah, so we talked before about frequency, and we talked before about vibration, and we talked about moving towards craft and getting burnt. And we also know that if races come near humans, they generally just black out. We see that all the time.
Yeah.
We've had prime examples of that in the last few weeks of people blacking out. So basically with disclosure, people can disclose as much as they want. They can use as much tic-tac and footage and all the rest of it. And there's this massive debate going on about what disclosure is and all this. But people need to understand that there's actually another side to disclosure, and that's the extraterrestrials. And they will disclose on their terms only. And their terms are that while humanity is continually harming each other, there will not be disclosure from them. They can't disclose, because if they land and they step out of craft, and as the approaching party of humans walks up, puts their hands out, they all black out. So the thing is that I know this sounds funny, but the thing is,
no, it makes sense.
They would need to have people that were able to hold themselves in a vibrational space where they were able to interact with these beings. Now, this would be the same process if the Palladians landed, or anybody landed, or from a different vibrational state. So when we talk about disclosure, this is a great discussion that everyone's having about UAP disclosure. But the issue is there's one bugbear that everybody's going to have. So let's pretend that today we all know now that extraterrestrial races exist. It's disclosed. It's all over mainstream media. And then all of a sudden someone goes, well, what about all those people that said they were abducted? Right? Now, it turns out that, if 30% of the planet's all been taken or whatever, do we then confront those races about the fact that all those people have been taken? What do we then have a sit down with them and say, well, why did you take all those people? there's something that has to be resolved here. It's not just about disclosure, because a lot of the people that have been classed as being, have mental unwellness, tinfoil hats, all the rest of it, these people have been contacted. And in that contact, they're probably the ones that are at the forefront of the actual disclosure process, because people have been so discarnate from actually understanding the whole process of extraterrestrial life forms. Even now, I saw somebody on Twitter yesterday saying, yeah, it's just not possible. There can't be any other races. In complete denial. People are either in complete denial, or they're starting to move some way towards it, or they're in the they're here camp, that's fine, or they're actually being contacted and they're going, oh, they're here, all right, you just don't know it. That's and it's pretty interesting. It's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And it's complicated on many levels, because like you were saying, when they get to that point of like, okay, these people were saying they were abducted, what do we do? Well, then there's also the layer of, did the government know these people were being abducted? And if so, what do we do about that? There's so many different facets to this whole conversation.
I wouldn't be relying on anybody from anyone officially telling me that they knew that people were, like, it's more like, it's I don't know. To be honest, look at what's going on the planet. Why are people hungry? Why are there wars? Why is this? Why is that? There's 10 million questions as to why things are taking place on the planet based on fear and greed, probably. But there's a lot of things that need to be resolved.
Yeah. Speaking of the government, that makes me curious, and I don't know if you've ever talked to the Zetas about this, and I'm not sure exactly what race he supposedly met with, but there's the story of President Eisenhower meeting with the ETs and, trading, I think it was technology for abductions or something along those lines. Have you heard anything about that from the Zetas? Did that happen? Was it them? Was it another species of gray? Do we know anything?
We haven't ever asked them about that. People might go, are you crazy? Why wouldn't you ask them about that? Because while we're trying to ask them one of the 10 million questions that are there, you're also trying to hold your own space and be developed as well. And sometimes contact with them isn't about asking questions. It can be that for 6 months, all you're doing is meditating while they're working with you. And, we all know that on some level, there's been some level of contact with, officialdom. I think that they just, they're just slow. It's all slowly seeping out now through the Freedom of Information Act that people are using. They're getting documentation to support that. A person who's a natural thinker, an organic thinker, will want facts, will want evidence, will want to see some type of factual evidence in regards to disclosure. This is what the debate's all about, because as more and more of the scientific community move into it, they're starting to try to work out, well, where is empirical evidence in regards to evidence? Where is the truth? And I'm sure that we're sort of halfway between that, where we are right now. But I can see in some respects that a lot of the conversation is being hijacked by special interest groups, and that we need to be saying, just when it's time. We all of us want disclosure yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, as I say, disclosure happens, and what do we do today? We all walk outside, look at the sky, and say, well, where are they? See, because the extraterrestrials haven't decided to disclose yet.
Yeah. So do you think it'll be the extraterrestrials that decide to disclose, or will it be our own governments who obviously have some sort of understanding of this?
Yeah, it'll be humans that will disclose, and as I've said, then of course there will be a increase in cognitive behaviour, an increase in consciousness, where people go, I'm now willing to accept that because I've been told that's the truth. A lot of people won't believe it. But
I've said that too. Yeah, I think they'll be like,
other people will, and they'll go, okay. So there'll be then a tipping in consciousness in regards to that. that then opens the conversation and the consciousness space for the beings to say, well, are we actually welcome? Right?
Yeah.
What I laugh at is the people that are classing themselves as ambassadors. I hear people saying that they are ambassadors for extraterrestrial races.
Yeah.
I would not be listening to those people at all. It's just no, because the extraterrestrials realize that you cannot have one human as an ambassador for a species. This is why they're working with multiple millions of beings, of humans, so that when disclosure takes place, that they'll already have a good method of communicating with humanity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's part of the reason why they're in contact with so many people, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. But the primary function for the hybrid existence, and not, you notice I didn't say the hybridization of the planet. That's actually a completely different subject that probably isn't even taking place. The reason for hybrids are to increase consciousness, so that there's a story about this, that when humans were created, that by the Anunnaki, that they were of a certain nature and a certain consciousness. There was no spirit realm. And then as the individual entities that were created passed over, that consciousness would just go back to the Anunnaki spirit realm. What they started to notice, though, the Anunnaki, was that the individual spirit consciousness actually was developing its own ability to exist in its own space. And in doing so, all they did was create a technology that humans call spirit realm. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a technology or not. That's just a word. Yeah. It's just a space that spirit people exist in. Then, of course, once spirit people and extraterrestrials got together, they created the hybrids, and the hybrids were then able to increase the collective consciousness of the human race. Because when people come in and out of spirit realm, the Schumann frequency, as I was stating before, holds your consciousness to a specific level. It even is somewhat like a screen memory, and that screen memory then disables your ability to remember where you've come from. Hybrids and others are working towards increasing the frequency, so that ultimately you are able to remember. So that as a collective species of humanity, we can move forwards into the community of extraterrestrial nature.
So sorry, I had to sneeze. But I did hear what you were saying. So as you're saying that, I was curious. So is the spirit realm kind of unique to our planet, or is that something that other beings have also developed?
Yeah, it just depends on whether you are a created race. If you're a created race, then you're going to need a container to cycle in and out of. But if you've moved past that physical state, then you're already holding your own space of consciousness.
Okay. Interesting. Oh, that is fascinating. Well, I can't believe our 2 hours are already up. I know everybody has enjoyed watching you guys and listening to what you're saying. So don't worry, guys. They will be back next week. So Paul and Cyan are going to be traveling to Europe, or just the UK?
Yeah, the UK, yeah.
Okay. So next week they're going to be in the midst of traveling, so it'll be at a different time, but we will let you know. It's going to be Wednesday. I think we said 4 p.m. Eastern, but we'll let you know for sure.
Yeah.
And then while they're in the UK, because of the time difference, obviously it's quite a bit different than Australia, it'll also be at 4 p.m. Eastern, but again on Mondays. But we will let you know, so don't worry. They will still be here with us. I agree, Enzo. Time has flown by. I've done for almost all of it. Amazing conversation. Absolutely.
Thanks, Edward.
Oh, yes. Everybody's loving it. Well, don't worry. They will be back. So get your process the information, get your questions ready for next time. You guys are more than welcome to come on, just like Mr. Crowley did. So that's the point of the show, is to have a conversation with everybody.
I would suggest, Lynn, I would suggest that if people are more interested, they go to our website and just download some of the free books and read some of the stuff.
There's
yes.
a lot of information there.
Absolutely. And I will post the link to that page because I downloaded those myself. Oh, good. So glad you guys are enjoying this. It's a great show, guys. Great stream. Totally awesome. Enzo will have questions. I'm sure he will. Oh, thank you so much, Sunny. Oh my gosh, I can't keep up with them. Hi, Akashi Chris. Sorry you came in right at the end, but go watch the show. It was great. You'll enjoy it. But they will be back next week. And I will post the link to that page on Twitter. And I will actually, you know what? I can also go back and put it in the description too, so people can download those PDFs. So that was awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. As always, I love having any conversation with you two. You're always so fascinating, and I just love hearing the perspective that you have, because it's such a nice perspective. It's a little bit different than a lot of the stuff that we hear, and it's so very needed. So I absolutely love it. Yes, they're going to have tons of questions. So fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much. And it's morning there, so hope you have a great day. I think it's still morning, right? What are you, 13 hours ahead? So you're... Oh, okay. Well, go enjoy your lunch.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Yes, sounds good. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, awesome questions tonight, everyone. Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I always thank you, Cassie. You're so sweet. Yeah, I love going on with Enzo. I always love seeing what you guys come up with, because you come up with such great questions. Oh, and thank you so much for joining us. So again, that is it for us tonight. Thank you all so much for your amazing questions and your contributions to the conversations. I always love a great chat about experiencers and ET experiences. Thank you to Paul and Cyan for joining me here tonight, for bringing their unique and incredible perspective. Don't forget to check out the morning show every day here on Rebellious Ufology at 8 a.m. Eastern to get your daily UFO podcast lineup. And they do have a YouTube channel as well. So I'm going to have to get their info from them about it, and I will put that in the description down below as well. I'll make sure all of that info gets in there for you. But go download the PDFs. They're fascinating. And if you enjoyed the show, please consider joining the rebellion by hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to ring the bell so you'll get notifications. Hopefully they will be on time. I don't know about you, but I've had some that have been lagging lately. YouTube needs to get it together. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great night, and I will see you right back here tomorrow at 8 Eastern. Thank you so much.